So it's been a good week getting through Senate bills, and of course a week from today is our floor deadline, and as well as the Senate's deadline. So a lot more bills making their way onto the governor's desk in the coming weeks as we continue to wind down the policy session, as well as dig into budget bills. A couple of bills that we've been really talking a lot about. I know the governor talked in the State of the State about the importance of limiting virtual days, and we passed that legislation and this week, as well as the bell-to-bell no-cell legislation, which was a priority of both chambers as well as the governor. It was good to see that legislation make it across the finish line as well. So happy to take questions and visit about what's on y'all's mind.
What is next for the mental health oversight committee that y'all have had 3 meetings now?
Yes.
Still not 100% insight on some of the budget numbers from the last meeting's kind of tenor?
Yeah. So earlier this week, the commissioner came to have a meeting with me and requested that we get together and get House and Senate budget leaders in a room with her and her budget team. I said, absolutely, we'll clear our calendar, happy to meet. We'll meet tomorrow if you want to. And so I visited with the Senate, and they were available over the lunch hour on Tuesday, and so we met, and they showed us some information on their proposals for how to close the gap from $63 million to $6.2 million for the fiscal year 25, the supplemental appropriation, but it still did not address our questions about the FY26 budget, so we still don't know even the request from the department on FY26. And then on the FY25 budget, a lot of the items that were identified by the department were one-time identifications or one-time savings, which means they can also be, if you fill the shortfall from FY25 with one-time money, calls into question, do you still have the shortfall in FY26 when those one-time sources of revenue are gone? So we're going to have another hearing. I was talking to Leader Lawson about that today. I don't know if I don't want to get ahead of him on announcing the timeline of that or the scope or the content of that meeting. He'll have an announcement forthcoming at some point. I don't know if that'll be today or tomorrow, but check for that out of his office.
How do you feel those hearings have gone so far? Some of your colleagues have expressed some frustration. What was your message to Commissioner Friesen about that?
Yeah, so I expressed to the commissioner part of the reason people are so frustrated in the meetings, my colleagues, are because we're not getting answers to our questions, and it's not anything mean or malicious or anything like that. It's just we want to get answers to these questions. Obviously, there's a lot of issues that have come up in those hearings. The crux of it, of course, is the budget issues, and we have just 2 to 3 weeks now to try to come to a budget resolution, and we still don't even know what the department's request is for FY26, let alone what we as legislators would ultimately decide to fund. The department still hasn't told us what their ask is as they've revised this, and here we are, and it's May 1st. So if I sound like I'm frustrated, it's because I am.
Can you vocalize the main problem that you guys are having in getting information from the mental health department? Just from the way that the hearings have gone, what exactly is the barrier, as far as you can tell?
It's a great question. I mean, they know what our questions are because we've asked them in public hearings, and so they did bring some documents to the meeting on Tuesday, which will likely be discussed at the next public hearing. And so again, I don't want to get ahead of Leader Lawson on that, but we want to dive in and get more answers on some of those line items. Honestly, though, we shouldn't have just gotten that on Tuesday of this week. We should have had that weeks and weeks ago, because that's really the crux of our question: is how did you get from a $63 million deficit to a $6.2 million hole, and also what are you asking for in the upcoming fiscal year? Those seem like very simple questions, and so we're still working to get resolution on those answers.
I asked Senator Paxton the same question, and I just want to make sure I run by you as well. What would you need to see to feel like the legislature can move forward on the budget and on mental health and kind of, or we learn what the word special is, I guess?
I think we'll know it when we see it.
After your meeting on Tuesday, do you feel confident that 6.2 million is the right number, number. You said they explained to you how they got to that number a little bit more. And then last week at the at the hearing, the interim CFO said 1 week I'll have the budget request to you. He said, if someone had asked, if you have to stay up 24 hours a day working on it, what's the deadline we're going to get that? And now it's passed, so
I been a little busy, so I haven't personally checked my email today, but if it's come today, I haven't seen it. But to your point, it has been a week. So yes, we very much expect to have those requests by the end of the week, as that is what we were told. And it would be necessary. I mean, I think you also asked my confidence of the $6.2 million number. Currently, I don't have a lot of confidence in that dollar figure, just because the spreadsheet that we received outlining how they got to that it did not seem to add up to me. There were also a couple of line items for potential uses that would require statutory changes, and it's not something that the department could unilaterally do. And whether or not the legislature would want to make those statutory changes to open up those funds is unknown at this time.
Loft testified that I think the Department of Health has now its 12th budget revision in this current fiscal year. Have you ever seen that from agency mid-year before or past mid-year mark of that many budget revisions that is going to the legislature for consideration?
I don't keep track of such things, but the closest equivalent I can think of in my 9 years was the State Department of Health, who lost $30 million, and then a few weeks later they found $30 million. That was probably, 2018, 2019 timeframe. But besides that, I don't. Governor Fallon was still governor, so it had to be 17 or 18.
Did Commissioner Friesen articulate whether she's willing to testify further, whether she's willing to continue to have her people participate, or is there a feeling from the administration that, hey, this thing should run its course and let's,
We're going to invite them to come back and testify further. We're expending public taxpayer dollars. That conversation should happen in a public environment. And also, frankly, with the time crunch, look, I have the utmost faith in members of the legislature and our staff. But frankly, with the scope and the breadth of this problem, I want all 4 million Oklahomans helping us dig into this. And so I think the public hearings have been helpful. Leader Lawson often gets texts, phone calls, emails from members of the general public with suggestions and ideas and thoughts, which are certainly helpful to us as we dig into this. And we'll have some further hearings.
Was it articulated to you that the governor's office would prefer that you didn't?
We're going to have hearings, and we're going to invite them, and we look forward to seeing them at the next hearing.
Do you think the governor should come down a little more when it comes to this? He thought the director of forestry, when he wasn't doing a good job, he said, get out, commissioner, all this is happening. Do you think the governor should start saying stuff and start stepping in and start kind of direct,
ultimately, the governor's appointed Commissioner Friesen to run the agency, and so I think it's up to the commissioner to handle this. Certainly, it's on the governor's radar. I have personally spoken to the governor about this multiple times and have had good conversations, and I think we all want to see resolution on this issue, land the plane, if you will, and also set a trajectory for improving the mental health system in the state of Oklahoma, which very much needs it.
So you mentioned the Department of Health situation a few years ago and how they lost money then found it. Do you feel like that there's a possibility that might happen again with ODMH? And I mean, do you attribute some of the current problems to the current administration just not understanding how things had been done for years? And would you lay blame more on the old administration or the new administration just not for understanding?
There were about 3 questions there, so I'll do my best to make sure I get to all of them. So I do think some money that they thought they were missing, they didn't find. It does appear some of that to be the case. Maybe as much $19-20 million or so that has perhaps traditionally been used in the Title 19 program that is probably for this purpose. So that drops the 63 to 43, and then trying to work through in different contract revisions and various one-time measures to try to close the remainder of the gap from what I can tell. What was your next question?
Well, I guess, do you lay more blame on the old administration for the way they did things or the new administration for not understanding how they did things?
I think there has been a lot of blame cast on previous, but look, we've had our commissioner was also there last year for the budget for FY25 as well as the budget that's being requested for FY26. And so that's why we're talking to the commissioner about this. She was the commissioner this time last year. She's the commissioner this time this year. So she's the one we're talking to get some answers.
The big subject today that we've been talking about is the social studies standards. You heard of those? No, I'm joking. Of course you have. It's been the big topic today. Do you have a response? It seems like Walters, did he talk to you? He talked to a bunch of leaders Monday or something and seemed to change a lot of minds with his conversation surrounding social studies standards.
As I shared sitting in this chair several weeks ago when this first kind of came up to discussion, I invited the state superintendent to come speak to the House Republican caucus, and he did. And you know, I thought he did a good job from his perspective of laying out the standards and the content of them. And then it's my understanding, although I was not in the room, but it's my understanding he did go speak to the Senate Majority Caucus on Monday, according to reporting. And so, you know, whether that changed people's minds or not, I can't speak to that. I'm not a member of the Senate. But again, we chose the legislature this week to follow a historical precedent of not intervening in this process that the elected state superintendent oversees, and didn't intervene. So it's been fascinating over the past 10 days or so how the conversation has seemed to shift from the standards themselves and actually the words that are on paper to the processes. And I will say, I believe it was last Wednesday, I did run into the state superintendent following statements that had been made that the board members received allegedly different information in their official packet from the State Department of Education versus what they voted on. And so the state superintendent told me, I'll send you the information. I'll send you the documents. And so sent us the packets, and I talked about that at length in my last week press availability. But we went through those at length to try to find discrepancies. And the only discrepancies we could find is some pages had watermarks and others didn't, and some words were italicized on one and bolded in the other, but the actual content and the words, we couldn't find any changes. And so when it came to that, you know, that's where things stood.
Well, they got it 12 hours before they had to vote on it was the whole complaint there. 12 hours before they had to vote on it is when they got the changed one that had like the, you know, election stuff and took out Biden administration Infrastructure Act stuff 12 hours before, and that's what they complained about, was like they got it so late and they wanted more time that didn't happen, and so that was what the whole issue was. So I don't know if that was not what you found.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, they were appointed when they were appointed, you know, and so that kind of created a time crunch for them with the timing of everything. It's my understanding, although I did not watch the entirety of the board meeting, I've been told they had opportunities if they wanted to during the day to dig in further to those standards. And so, look, at the end of the day, it passed with only one no vote, is my understanding. And so those standards are going into effect.
Senator Julia Kurt said earlier today that the legislature's inaction on those standards is another failure of the body to hold Ryan Walters accountable. I wonder what you make of that comment and whether you think there is something to hold Ryan Walters accountable for and what it is.
Look, the Democrats really love talking about Ryan Walters. So I shared with one of the members today, I said, you know, what are you guys going to talk about after today? And so I'm sure there'll be something else about Ryan Walters that they want to talk about. You know, frankly, he probably doesn't hate that because it keeps him where you guys are talking about him. So.
Well, last year, didn't like Republicans hop on to an impeachment letter almost? Last year, Republicans were up for that, not just Democrats. I think that was the thing. So Republicans have been too, wouldn't you say? I mean, there have been issues with Republicans and Walters, not just Democrats.
There's a former member of the legislature that was circulating a letter last year. That's true.
You know, more about Republicans and Ryan Walters. The social studies standards, correct me if I'm wrong here, weren't there some House Republicans who did, you know, join in as a co-author on that SGR 20 by Senator Pugh?
Sure, yes, there were members that signed on as co-authors. And look, as I've said from the beginning, that we weren't going to take action without being in concert with the Senate. Anything that we were going to do, we needed to be on the same page, the House and Senate. And at the end of the day, we couldn't build consensus on those items on what, if anything, we wanted to change.
How worried are you about potential Trump administration cuts to Medicaid and the possible changing of the percentage of the federal match in crafting a budget for FY '26. I mean, looks like that might be coming up in Congress towards the end of the summer. By that time, your budget ought to be done.
Sure. So we were talking a lot about that early on in session when it looked like it might be a reality in the budget, and then of course Congress passed the CR and kicked that discussion down the road 6 months, I believe. And so, I mean, we'll be watching it. What we've heard from our contacts in Washington is if Medicaid cuts to states were to happen, that they would most likely be tiered and happen over time, and not just the rug being pulled out from under it. But look, with all the prior to being elected in 2016. I know the state of Oklahoma had never had $2 billion in savings, ever. And, based on the governor's, team, their projections were projected to finish this fiscal year with $5 billion in savings. So from statehood until 2017, we never even had two, and now we're sitting at potentially $5 billion in surplus. And so with any uncertainty, whether it's this issue or global markets, what have you, Oklahoma is better prepared for uncertainty than we've ever been in the history of the state of Oklahoma.
Yesterday, there was a joint committee on pandemic relief funding, and they voted moved some dollars around, and it seems like the Donahue project, or the Donahue facility is not going to be moved forward with, and Senator Paxton said other facilities are being looked at. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you see as the future, because those beds are needed? Absolutely.
Yes, we definitely need to expand our bed, have new beds in the Oklahoma City area. And I remember a few years ago, I went to go tour the Griffin facility to go look at it to determine, if we needed to build a new one or not. Senator Hall, now Chairman Hall, he was vice chair, I believe, at the time, and I were going to tour it together. I got there before he did. He was on his way down. I was in the parking lot, and I called him. I said, "Hey, Senator, we don't have to go on this tour." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm in the parking lot, and I can tell you we need to get a new facility. This isn't going to work." And then we went on the tour, and it was very, it was encouraging talking to the staff that work at Griffin. The work that they do is so incredible. So the people that work there do such incredible work, but the facilities, we need, updated facilities for this area, and so. That is something we still need to get done.
So is the thought to upgrade, Griffin or another facility like that? Or, Senator Paxton made it seem like there's not money to build a new facility like Donahue anymore.
Yeah, there'd be a potential to purchase and renovate, other facilities, and use that to tackle this issue.
For clarity, the $33 million that was outlined in Senator Pugh's resolution of social studies standards, is that money that already exists, or will that have to now be appropriated?
Well, so it always would have had to have been appropriated, but we traditionally in the activities budget for the State Department of Education line item textbook funds that go towards this purpose, and so it's in the base of the budget. We did it in FY25, FY24, FY23, and so as long as the State Department of Education was held flat with the flex benefit increase, then it would be funded in their base level budget, but it will have to be included in the appropriations bill.
But that is more than what is traditionally appropriated, which I think is around $15 million.
No, I'm not sure the exact dollar amount, but I know it is. Textbooks are expensive, but we keep talking about social studies. There's also science, social studies and science, so it's not just one, it's both. Yeah. Well, thank you all.
Appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you.
They, a couple of years ago,